time you can give to support us would be really, really critical. So you can sign up at votejgr.com/phone bank. But in addition to the phone bank, which we're doing regularly, we also want to sort of replace what we would have been town halls with opportunities to share resources, tips, tricks, and opportunities to learn through these webinars. So we've already held 3 of them so far. We held one on the coronavirus itself with an expert on coronavirus. We held one on, most recently, on mental health and ensuring that you're recognizing the symptoms and tips to manage that. We also did one in advance of the first day of public remote learning for public school students. We did one on remote learning and homeschooling. And here we are learning about food and ways to be creative in the kitchen. Again, I'm not a great cook, so this is very useful for me and so many that perhaps aren't used to making meals as frequently as we are right now. So I want to thank Cristina Gonzalez, who is a foodie / political consultant, an all-around brilliant mujer. So I'm really happy to have her lead us in this cooking experiment and then really walk us through how to make lentil soup and chocolate pudding, all within the hour. So again, thank you all for joining us.
Yay. So the idea behind this was twofold. One of them, obviously, we're seeing a lot of people rushing to the supermarkets, buying up a lot of goods. And I don't think that people really have an idea of what to buy in this moment, mostly because we've never really been in a moment like this. So I wanted to be sure that we created a recipe or a couple recipes out of stuff that you could buy and keep for a long time, which is why I love lentils. You could just buy bags of that, and they're very nutritious. They keep for a long time, and they're very versatile. The other part of it is I wanted to pick stuff that for people who don't normally cook at home would be really easy. And these are also really great recipes to make with your kids. So I tried to sort of think of some stuff that we can make out of stuff that's readily available, stuff that you could buy and it'll keep for a long time, and it'll be really easy to follow along. So we're going to start that now. Jessica, you ready?
Yes.
All right. So the first step, because we are using dried lentils, I'm using red lentils, but you could use whatever you have at home, honestly. We're going to take a cup of those lentils. I'm going to use a strainer, put them in the strainer, and run water over them, and then leave them soaking once that water runs and it runs clear, okay? So I'm going to put these lentils in the strainer. We're gonna just soak them up, get some of that schmutz off of them. I'm not really on camera. So just rinse it for a little bit, and then I put it into just a measuring cup or whatever you have, and cover with water, like that, and just set it aside. Okay.
I'm already spilling beans everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Okay. You got it, bud?
You keep going and I'll follow along.
Okay. So then once you have those sort of set aside rinsing, we're going to peel a carrot. Pretty straightforward. So, Jess, how's your week been?
Very unique in this moment. It's been really meaningful to connect with voters. As I mentioned, we've been doing mutual aid calls and checking in with folks. So that's been very meaningful. I'm finding that people want to talk, right? A lot of people practicing, they should be, social isolation. So we're finding that people are definitely more chatty, which is nice, because oftentimes, these phone banking is, you often don't get people who pick up or are able to speak for a while. So, but we've been hanging in there. It's obviously a unique and scary time. Myself, my family, we're practicing social distancing. My son just finished his first week of remote learning, so he's been doing great. He's been really great, and it's been really fun to see how resilient kids are and like how quickly they're able to like adjust in a really tough moment. So props to the little ones out there trying to figure life out together. We're all in this together. We're all
all right. So you have your carrot peeled?
Oh, I'm right behind you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so for the people following at home, once you peel your carrot, I cut it up into even pieces. This one, because of the size that it is, I like to quarter it. Well, first I have it, and then I quarter it, and then I dice it. So
I am one step behind you.
So you end up with like carrot sticks, essentially, that I then slice through. Okay.
And listen, all of you at home, if I can make this work, you can. So,
exactly, right?
So we have someone who knows what they're doing and someone who supports the local economy by eating out in this amazing community pretty frequently. So I'm excited to learn this. Again, if I can do it, you can do it.
And cooking's not as hard as a lot of people are afraid it's going to be, mostly because what I like about cooking so much is you could play around with it. It's not like exact the way that baking is, and you could just make some shit up, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. Order pizza. And I don't know about you guys, but I compost in my house. So all these little food scraps, I'm sort of putting them aside to put them in the freezer. I also felt that because of the moment that we're in, I'm going to start my own composting bin. I ordered worms, so we're gonna see what that does. Apparently it lets off worm juice, is what they call it, and it's supposed to be really good for your plants. Sounds real appetizing.
That's great, because I know a lot of the farmers market have stopped doing the composting, which is unfortunate. I'm really fortunate that my building has a compost, so we can still do it. But what does it take to create your own compost, Cristina? Like the worms?
So obviously you set aside the food scraps. It's knowing which of the food scraps you can save. I don't save any bones or anything that comes from an animal. So it's mostly any food scraps from the vegetables and fruits that I make. Coffee grounds is also a really good thing to set aside. Eggshells, stuff like that. Right now I'm just keeping it in a plastic bag in my freezer, but once I get my composting bin, you take those food scraps, you lay out some dirt that you could also just buy online. You get your worms, and you just put food scraps into a bin, and the worms eat up those food scraps, and so it's like it doesn't even give it time to really rot. It turns it into nutrition, essentially. That goes back into the soil, and then it seeps through the soil, and it creates the worm tea.
The worm tea, yes.
Worm tea.
Yes. And folks, if you have questions or want to chime in or want to offer any insight into this conversation as we go along, like, feel free. There's a button where you can raise your hand on the bottom where it says participants. You can click that and raise your hand. And then I have Mia who can help, make sure you're off mute and stuff. Or if you want to just type in the chat function, you can do that as well. And Mia can read out the question as well, because we're both trying to cook here. And I hope you are too, or you're taking notes.
Or just watching us, whatever.
I joke about not being a good cook, but I do love watching cooking shows. So I'd probably be watching this instead of cooking. Okay.
All right, so you got your carrot?
My carrots are chopped.
Carrot is chopped. Perfect. Now your onion.
Ooh, onions. Okay.
You got your onion?
I got an onion, yep.
Okay. So for something this size, because the onion's kind of not as small as I usually get it, this is about a medium size, I'm going to use half this onion. I usually chop off the top like that because then it allows me to peel it like that. It makes peeling the onion a lot easier. Just peel it.
That's a good trick.
Yeah. My grandpa taught me that. Way back in the day. I've been cooking since I was about 8 years old. Both my grandmothers were big into cooking. And my paternal grandmother actually used to make huge pots of food for like the neighborhood widowers. Just men who never learned how to cook for themselves that needed to still eat. So she'd make the food, they'd pay her, and that's what she had her like in-home luncheonette essentially. And what I learned to cook just by watching them, and the things that I make that are specifically Puerto Rican is just from my memory of how things tasted and how things smelled whenever my grandmother's cooked. All right, so now I sliced it in half. Onions, I'm gonna dice it. So what I do is I slice it like this into slices, like that. Whoopsie, I'm messing it up. Just slices. Then I slice it down in half like that, so that when you slice it, when you turn it again, it is automatically in diced. So I don't have to dice it again.
Yeah.
Okay. There. And they're done. Here, I hope you see it. There. Now it's in the shop. So, boop. Okay. All right. How's it going for you, bud?
It's going.
All right. So for those following at home, I'm also gonna do the garlic. It's 3 cloves of garlic. So what we're doing right now, the prepping of all the vegetables and cutting everything up, this is called mise en place. So mise en place is basically just like getting your station in order. And so anything that needs to be done before you do the cooking, which is like when you turn on the heat, you do it now, because once you turn on that heat, things are going to move really pretty quickly, and you just want to have everything prepared. So you want to have all your vegetables chopped. If you're cooking with meat, you want to have all your meat seasoned, and just have all the ingredients out. If I have anything that's in a can, I have all those cans opened, so I don't have to fiddle around with a can opener while I'm cooking. And that's how you do mise en place, buds.
Christina, did you say, did you say the full onion or the half an onion?
I do half of it.
Oh, you do half
the onion, yeah.
Okay.
So cut the onion in half,
yep.
And then on the flat surface, put the onion like that.
Yeah.
Then I slice this ways, right? And then I slice in half this ways, whoop. And then I turn it and I slice this ways.
Okay. Yeah, I have it chopped. I just didn't know how. I started chopping too much, and I'm like, wait, I think that's too much onion.
Whatever. Because when we cook them, we're gonna cook them nice and slow so that they get translucent. So even if you have a lot of onions, it's not gonna be like anything bitter. It's not gonna have a bite to it. Whatever. And the good thing about onions is that it sort of melts into whatever you're cooking. It's not something that you can really taste a lot unless you're like caramelizing a bunch of onions, which we're not doing. All right. So with the cloves of garlic, I don't know if you could see on this camera, I tried to make it so that you could. You smash them so that you could undress them.
Yes.
It just makes it easier to make them, to get them out of their little jackets. I don't know what they're called. They're clothes, vegetable clothes. I don't know. All right.
I'm not watching cooking shows.
What?
I did learn that watching cooking shows.
Yeah, exactly. So then I'm gonna dice the garlic up as well. Ay. What's it like? What's it been like doing the homeschooling stuff?
So we had a webinar with Leontine Greenberg, who is she's someone in the community. She doesn't live too far away from me, actually, who has homeschooled her child for many years. And she gave us such good tips that I'm so grateful that she gave it to us, because one thing she said was that the homeschool curriculum will not take all day, right? Right now, if your child is going to, a local public school, they get there at 8 and they leave at 2:20. So, that's a long day. And you think that it's going to kind of, it's full of like learning. And the reality is that they spend a lot of time with other skills, right? Soft skills, art, a lot of socialization, physical ed. There's obviously lunch, music. There's all sorts of different ways they're spending their day. So she flagged that the work could only take maybe 2 hours or 3 hours, and be okay with that, right? Like, you don't have to fill their day with more work because you're like, oh, you're sort of trying to fill a school day. And that was such an important point and recommendation, because he did finish his work pretty quickly. And every morning we have a little chalkboard, and we write what the assignments of the day are. And as he finished them, he checked them off. So there was a little bit of pride in seeing how he did, and that he was able to finish his work. And we saw that, he was progressing and getting his work done, but taking breaks as needed. And again, not feeling the like pressure or stress to like fill the day with extra things, or, like they need the break. They need the time to goof around a little. I saw a friend who posted on, social media, that this is what homeschool looks like, and their kids were bouncing off the bed and jumping around, and it kind of is. And I think as working families, it's really hard, because many of us are still required to do our own work, right, in a remote way. We're all in this together, right? We're all figuring it out. And thankfully, my son's 8, so he's more independent than maybe a younger child. But when he wanted to run around and jump around and do what he needed to do, we were okay with that, because he needed some space and time to just enjoy. So that was a helpful insight coming into the process, because we just didn't know what to expect.
Right. How has it been in practice, though?
What?
How has it been in practice? Like, how has it been, running for office? Because you work from home, and you had been working from home, and a lot of the day is calling people, asking for money, and then you also have to be a parent in that moment. Like, how has that been, juggling those things?
That is challenging, because you obviously don't want to, thankfully my son's pretty independent, but we need time together. So I've given myself a block of time to spend together, that we'd eat food together, have breakfast in the morning, and then, kind of each go to our respective little workspaces, however they were set up, and still do the campaigning. The hardest part about campaigning is that obviously you want to be out and meeting voters and talking to them and at the doors, and that's obviously not safe in this moment. And that's been something that's been really difficult as a candidate. But as a parent, it's been nice to be home, and even if we're both on our own things, we've been able to be in the same space together, which I didn't anticipate that happening through much of the campaign, because you're out so much. So slight blessing in disguise. I think you always have to find the positives and the silver linings. There was a quote I found that said, you could think of yourself as stuck at home or safe at home. So a shift in mindset.
Yeah. All right. How's it going for you with the cutting of the vegetables?
Garlic, onions, carrots, chopped.
Perfect. All right. Let us start cooking then. Yay. All right. Yes. So you wanna turn on the stove to about a medium heat. You put about 3 tablespoons of the olive oil in there. I don't really measure it. I do it by eye. But just enough so it sort of coats the bottom of this medium pan. Because you're
telling me to eyeball something, but just cut the bottom?
Yeah, just enough to coat the bottom. That's right. Whatever that is. And make sure that your olive oil hasn't gone rancid. A lot of people don't realize that olive oil does go bad. So make sure it still smells like olive oil. I usually use my hand to sort of test the temperature of it once I start to really feel the heat coming off of the bottom of the pan. And then I start to put in the vegetables. I start off with the onions because they take a little bit longer to start to get translucent. And then I add the garlic. If I were to add those two things at the same time, the garlic would cook faster and burn. And the flavor of garlic isn't really great for something like this.
Okay.
So let's start with the onions.
And for the viewers at home, we washed our hands really well before we started.
Yeah.
Okay, onions first, you said?
Onions first. Okay.
Cristina, I want to know what is the most creative thing you've cooked since you've been
here
in quarantine.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I've been that creative yet. I keep saying that I'm going to try the things that I've never made before, that I've always wanted to make, but I just so far really have found myself making things that are comforting to me, that make me think of home or remind me of my grandmother's. That's usually like what I do as a sort of coping mechanism in moments where I feel really stressed or anxious. So I've just been making stuff that reminds me of home, honestly, and sending pictures to my family.
And I know where home is for you, but tell us where home is for everyone.
Oh, so I'm from Puerto Rico. Most of my family's all there. We started a family WhatsApp, and my sister, like a week in, my sister was like, I think we need to put Fifi in quarantine from this group chat, and she's been just like spamming us with stuff. So then I add the garlic. That's gonna start to smell real good real soon. I usually add them when the onions start to look translucent like that. So they start to get a little bit translucent. And then I add the carrots. And then this is when we bring back the lentils that have been soaking. If you'll notice, the lentils soaked up a ton of that water that you put them in. I'm going to just dump that all into here.
You dump the water with it?
Yeah, because the water is clean, because you've already cleaned those lentils, so it's not going to be like cloudy water or anything like that.
I think I put too much water.
Sure.
Huh?
I think I put too much water.
Oh yeah, maybe dump some of that. A little bit, just like.
Okay. How's this?
That's better.
Let's put it all in here?
Put it all in. Under medium heat. Okay? So it should have, all the stuff should be in there now. All nice and cute. At this point, I add broth. So I have chicken broth, but if you're a vegan, you could add veg broth. So that's what you do. But yeah, this recipe is like super adaptable. If for whatever reason you don't have lentils, you could use chickpeas as well. And if you wanted to make this something that you serve over rice instead of a soup, I do about half the amount that I usually add of chicken broth, and then I add some coconut milk.
What how much broth are you using?
About 3 cups. It seems like a lot of broth to the lentils, but the lentils will soak up a lot of that water. So you need a lot of liquid for the lentils to cook in.
And Cristina, you said earlier that beans, I'm thinking again about being in quarantine, right? And stocking up on items that keep well. So beans is something that keeps well. What are other items you think people should, again, and being mindful not to like hoard things, right? We don't need to hoard, but you might want to be mindful when you're shopping so you don't need to go out frequently. What are other good items to?
So I sort of divided my shopping list into categories. There's dried goods, there is produce, and then there's and then stuff that you like fresh produce, and then stuff to freeze or frozen stuff. So in terms of dried goods, I like to use lentils. I like to use garbanzos, and because I'm Puerto Rican, like all of the beans. Although I buy those in cans. I also like to keep different types of broth. So I have chicken broth, like a lot of chicken broth. I have some vegetable broth, and I actually have seafood broth because I like to make a dish with squid ink. Because the little cans, I'll show you. These little things from Goya are really, really cheap. And I make this, it's like paella, but you make it with really small, like angel hair pasta. It's called fideos. So you cook it the same way as paella, but you make it with the squid. It's really affordable, really, really flavorful. I love making that shit. I always have tomato sauce, tomato paste, and cans of tomatoes, because tomatoes go bad really easily, so I just like to have them in cans if you want something that keeps for a long time. What else do I have? Coconut milk, obviously tuna, and sardines or anchovies are really great because you can add them to a lot of stuff, and it adds amazing flavor to food. And let me think what else. And then because I'm Puerto Rican, so the thing about Puerto Rico is 90% of the food that we consume in Puerto Rico is imported from the United States. And that was the case specifically during wartime. So a lot of the food culture that we developed in Puerto Rico came from whatever was available to us during wartime. So we eat a lot of like potted meats and preserved meats. So I have corned beef from a can. I have Vienna sausages.
Vienna sausages. Classic.
Yeah, I mean, because it was such a, like, we didn't have access to fresh meat during wartime, so Puerto Ricans just sort of have to figure it out, like, how do we still make delicious food with the protein that's available to us? And the canned stuff is really what was available to us. So I always have that, even when I'm not in quarantine. I eat that food.
That's a good reminder. Like my mom's family is from Puerto Rico. My dad is from Paraguay. So my father's an immigrant. My mom's, part of the Puerto Rican diaspora. And it now makes sense why some of the foods they make, right? Like the Vienna sausage just brought me back to my abuela in Brooklyn, right, who came in from Puerto Rico, and it was always rice, beans, gandules, or rice and gandules, and then oftentimes it's corn or Vienna sausage.
Yeah.
In the rice. So I was curious, like, and we used to call it little hot dogs. We didn't know what but now it makes sense why that was a staple.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because that was just what was available to us. I make it really good. So, I mean, at least I like it. I don't know if it's really good or it's just that it tastes like home to me. I don't think I've ever fed it to anybody who isn't Puerto Rican, so we'll find out. So that's usually what I have in terms of dry goods, and obviously, like in addition to that stuff, I have different types of rice and different types of pastas. I like to cook with medium grain, but I also like to keep glutinous rice, which is what you usually cook with for Thai food, and jasmine rice, because jasmine rice is really good for both savory and sweet dishes. And it's super versatile. It's super flavorful and fragrant. I love cooking with jasmine rice, and it's really easy to cook with. And so those are all the dry goods.
I'm just going to interrupt for a PSA. I'm just going to interrupt for a PSA. I just got a text from Notify NYC, which provides COVID updates. So it says, New Yorkers, help slow the spread of COVID-19. Stay home to save lives. When you go out, put yourself and others at risk. Important reminder. And to get these reminders, you can text COVID, I think COVID-19, let me see. The COVID, yeah, just COVID, COVID, to the number 692-692. And they give you little updates and reminders frequently. And I'm going to go wash my hands because I touched my phone.
Yeah. We have one question from a viewer. Christian first wants you to know that he's waiting on his external mic, so he can't speak, but he's taking extensive notes because he can't cook. But he's also curious if you can repeat the name of the Goya squid ink. He's curious.
Oh, I'll bring it back up here, if you could see it. It's this.
Premium squid pieces in their own ink.
I know, it's like, but what it really is, what's really delicious about it is the ink that it comes in. I make a broth out of it essentially. So I take the seafood broth, I take the squid ink from this, and I add, I usually have saffron. I add some saffron, some turmeric, a little bit of crushed garlic, and I make a broth out of that. Then I take the angel hair pasta, toast it up, add some onion to it, and then little by little you add that broth from the squid ink, and then you add also the meat that comes in this. And oh, it's so good. It's so hearty. And then serve it with a side of aioli, like a garlic aioli. It's top notch, and it's so cheap. All right, so right now I got my lentils are bubbling. How are yours going, Jess? Are they bubbling yet?
There's bubbles. They're not bubbling like
they're cooking.
Like boiling, but
yeah,
they're cooking.
So get them simmering with a low boil. And now I add the tomato paste.
Yes.
So you do about a tablespoon of that.
Tablespoon? Okay.
A tablespoon. Add it right to there. If you don't have tomato paste, that's fine too. I add the tomato paste because it adds a little bit of a tang, and it adds a little bit of a thickness too. There we go. And if you'll notice, if you're cooking at home, at this point, as it's been boiling, the lentils are really just soaking up all that broth. So it's not as loose as it was before. It's starting to like thicken up pretty quickly. So I add the tomato paste. This is also when I add all of my seasonings. So I like to add bay leaves. I'm gonna add one bay leaf.
Just one.
Okay. And then I'm also going to add ground allspice. And I'm gonna add garam masala. Garam masala is sort of a mixture of ginger and cinnamon. Honestly, this just says salt, spices.
Okay, wait, how much allspice?
Allspice, I don't add a lot of it because it's a super pungent flavor. So I just add about a quarter teaspoon, like a little shake. I add about the same amount of the garam masala. I also do some cumin. Hold on, let me grab it from my spice rack. Okay. And if for whatever reason you don't have allspice or bay leaves or garam masala or cumin, it's totally fine. Like thing about this is that you can make it taste however you want. So if you don't have allspice, add a little bit of cinnamon, like put a cinnamon stick into it. It's really tasty. If you don't have the garam masala, if you have like something like ginger, you could add that. Ginger and turmeric go really well with the lentils. But I do recommend getting cumin. Cumin is super versatile. It goes really well with meats. And then I also find when I'm cooking stuff that is vegan, cumin gives it a sort of hearty meatiness to it. So I love cooking with cumin. Oh, that's starting to smell so good.
So I got the bay leaf, I got the cumin, I got the allspice. I don't have the masala, but I think
That's fine.
Yeah.
If you don't have the masala, get a little bit of cinnamon. Add just like a little
Okay.
of cinnamon, however much that is. I don't know. I don't measure. I mostly eye, and then I smell. Like, what does it need? That needs a little bit more cumin. It's not very helpful for people at home, but that's usually how I do it. But the thing about cooking is start off with recipes, and little by little you'll start to see what different ingredients lend to recipes, and you start to develop an instinct around cooking. So that's how I can smell and just say, oh, it's missing such and such a thing. And I've done this a million times. All right, Jess, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm very proud of myself over here.
All right, we are at 6:43. At this point, I'm going to let this cook. I usually also, at this point, add some salt and pepper to taste, however much that is for you. And let it simmer. I'm going to move where this is on my stove because I'm going to use this spot here for the next item. Cover that. We're going to do pudding.
We cover it?
Okay. So I'm moving it to another burner.
And we keep it on medium or like a lower heat?
I simmer it.
Simmer.
So it'll be a little bit low and let it cook.
And we cover it.
And I cover it, yeah. All right. So now I get my ingredients for the pudding, putting away some of these other ones. Okay, so chocolate pudding. I love chocolate pudding. Have you ever made chocolate pudding before, Jess? Never?
Out of a Jell-O box.
Huh?
Out of a Jell-O box.
That's fine.
You know.
So this recipe isn't my recipe. I'm not going to take credit for it. It's from the Gramercy Tavern Cookbook. It is the best chocolate pudding. They like to serve it with a salted caramel and these brioche, like toasted brioche croutons that are just like butter. It's just butter. And they serve it with those, and it's really good. The recipe that I sent y'all is super adaptable. I'm going to make it not vegan, but I'm going to give you guys stuff that you could use to substitute in order to make it vegan.
My dairy products, I'll be right back.
Yeah. And then Jess, who eats keto, also has some substitutes. So if you wanted to let them know what you're using as we're going along in lieu of the stuff that I'm putting in the recipe, feel free to pipe up on that. Okay.
What measuring spoons do I need?
Pardon?
What measuring spoons do I need?
I don't know, whatever you like to use. I don't know what you got.
Like what size?
So I use the cup. Hold on a second. I just bring all of mine out. I have these. And I got these. Alrighty, so let's start this sucker. So I start with 1.5 cups of the milk into the saucepan over medium to low heat.
1.5 cups?
1.5 cups, yep, of milk. If you are vegan, I would recommend either using oat milk or almond milk. I don't love using soy milk for desserts like this because soy milk tends to have a weird texture in desserts, like a graininess almost, and the aftertaste can also be a little off-putting. So if you're going to use something to make it vegan, I recommend almond milk or oat milk. So put that over medium heat. And you also add 1/4 cup of the sugar. So we're actually going to use more than this of milk and sugar. It's just that we're gonna sort of do part of it on the heat and part of it off the heat. And I'll tell you why in a second. Jess, could you guess why?
No. No. Wait, how much sugar?
So do 1/4 cup of the sugar into the milk that you're heating up because you want to dissolve that sugar.
All right, so here's my first substitute. I'm using erythritol instead of sugar. It's just a sugar replacement. It's made of sugar alcohol, and it has no calories. It's free, vegan. You bake some sugar. So, healthier option for those who are opting, like, need a low sugar diet. Maybe if you have diabetes, might be a good option. Okay, so 1/4. Put it in here. Okay, perfect.
And it's a 1-to-1, right?
Yeah, I think so. It just says add to food as you would sugar.
That's a 1-to-1. But if you use any other sugar substitutes, just make sure that you know the equivalency because not all of them are 1-to-1. So then, while you're melting or dissolving the sugar in the milk, I add the rest of the dry ingredients into a little bowl. So it's another of the 1/4 cup of the sugar into a little bowl. I'm gonna set that aside. Then we do a 1.5 tablespoons of the cocoa. So I'm using Hershey's cocoa. Jess, I know that you have a substitute for this too. But
yeah, I wonder how I'm going to do it actually, because I actually have hard, it's Lily's dark chocolate that it's sweetened with stevia. It's also vegan and non-GMO, so there's no sugar either, but it's hard. Do you have any?
That'll be later though. I think that you also had the cocoa, right?
Oh yeah, cocoa. Yes, I have cacao. So how much is that?
1.5 tablespoons. So 1/2 of a tablespoon is actually 1.5 teaspoons.
Okay.
So you do the cocoa. Now, if you were doing vegan, you'd be omitting the eggs. And so what eggs do into something like this is they thicken it. So when you're omitting the eggs, you got to add more of the other stuff that thicken it. And so one of those things is more of the cocoa and more of the cornstarch. That's why, like, in the recipe that y'all got sent, it says if you're doing it vegan, you add more cocoa and you add more cornstarch because you want more of the thickening agent. 1 second, please.
I do want to talk about a concern I have with food right now. One thing we've learned from calling our neighbors, and again, we're calling mostly seniors, is that people are concerned about access to food right now. We've had a few people that asked about groceries and Meals on Wheels type of program. And I spent the day calling about 9 different food pantries, and none were open. And I'm really concerned about the potential lack of access to food that we can see, particularly in a moment where we're asking people not to go out.
That's crazy that they've just not been open. I mean, I do know that luckily Chef Jose Andres has his World Central Kitchen. One of them is in Queens, right?
Yeah, they. So I was on the founding board of an immigrant justice organization called New Immigrant Community Empowerment, and Chef Jose Andres' organization partnered with NICE. NICE is the acronym. And with elected officials Catalina Cruz, who's my neighboring assemblywoman, and I believe Michael Blake in the Bronx, to distribute food to day laborers and people who were still in the construction industry out there working. So I thought that was really beautiful and powerful. But I think the need is much more great than, certainly just the immigrant community and just those who are in the construction industry. So I'm feeling concerned about the sustainability, right, of food in this moment, particularly when many people are quarantined and there's elders who really shouldn't leave their homes. Even when there is, they said one of the senior centers was offering grab and go meals, but that means you have to go to the senior center and pick it up. And actually, when I called, they said tomorrow they were stopping that program because of safety of their own workers.
Oh, dang.
So it's a very concerning, dangerous cycle that I'm seeing, right? Obviously, you want to protect their own workers, but then that leaves a gap of resources for the community that needs it most. So, so in a moment where we're cooking, I just want to recognize and reflect on that, because we're, I'm very blessed to have food here, and knowing that food access is actually becoming more and more difficult in this moment for our communities.
Yeah, especially for seniors. Like if you're a senior and for whatever reason you're living at home by yourself, like what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. Exactly. So
Like,
we're willing to get them the food. We just got to make sure that there's food to get, right? And that there's places in which they're providing that. And to the extent that we'll just go buy food and deliver it, we will, but that's, not a sustainable way of working. We need to have a safety net that's going to support us.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I don't have cornstarch. So what I'm using instead is white rice flour. Rice flour is really good for thickening, and it actually doesn't, I like it better because it doesn't add a flavor that cornstarch or flour does. So we're doing 2 tablespoons of that thickening agent. So if you have cornstarch, use cornstarch. I know that you're using something else. What are you using?
Tapioca flour.
Exactly. So tapioca flour is good. Rice flour is good.
How much you said? How much?
2 tablespoons. And you put it into those dry ingredients and just sort of mix that up kind of loosely with a fork so that they distribute and that there aren't any clumps in your sugar or anything like that. So it's nice and evenly distributed like that. I set that aside.
Anything messier.
Huh?
I'm not a neat cook, I'll tell you that.
It's fine, you learn. I'm not, like, you can't really see my surface right now, but it's not looking great. Then you take the rest of the milk, so it's another half a cup of the milk, and you put it into a little bowl, and you whisk it.
With the dry ingredients?
So no, a separate bowl. Put the rest of the wet ingredients, so it's half a cup of the milk. and the 2 egg yolks. So now here's the answer to that question that I asked before. The reason we do it this way is that you want to temper the eggs. So what that means is you want to acclimate them to the temperature of what you're cooking. Because if I were to add the egg yolks directly into the milk, they would cook and basically make scrambled eggs. And that's not good. You don't want that.
All right. Okay, so 2 eggs?
2 egg yolks.
Okay,
So
and...
you separate the yolks. I do it with my hands because I like the feeling of the egg yolks. Oh. Put it into the milk. Broke that up a bit by accident.
A different yolk.
Okay. And I always keep a little thing in my right here is to wash my hands. What's that?
This guy boiling over here, is that okay?
Lower it so it's just a little bit. It should be nice and it was just to dissolve the sugar. So now I whisk together the egg yolks and the milk. And I incorporate that into the dry ingredients.
I'm gonna clean my hands again.
Okay. So now with the milk that is warm, oopsie, I take about a 1/4 cup at a time and slowly put it into the chocolate to get the temperature of the eggs to the temperature of the hot milk.
All right, you're gonna have to back up a little.
Okay, I'll do it again. All right,
Okay.
so you got your eggs and your milk incorporated into the dry ingredients.
No, I didn't even do that yet. Okay,
Okay.
so
So let's do that.
I have to whisk the eggs and the milk, right?
Whisk the eggs and the milk. And
Uh-huh.
once you whisk those and incorporate them, you add it into the dry ingredients.
Add it into the dry ingredient, all of it, right?
Mm-hmm. And incorporate it. Okay. So nice and warm. All right. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay. So, all right, it's all mixed up.
Okay, then you take your little measuring cup like this, or whatever you have, that you could put into the warm milk, and take out a 1/4 of a cup at a time and put it into your chocolate mixture. And whisk it all together. While you do that, I'm gonna check in on my lentils.
Christina, we have one more question about the lentil soup. Can you repeat what temperature you were cooking the onions and carrots? What level of heat was that on?
It was on medium.
Okay.
So
And for
medium, and then I lowered it to a simmer once they started to cook. That sounds good.
Yeah. Should we start the soup?
I'm gonna let it cook a little bit longer. Once the carrots are really tender, I usually like to either run half of the soup through the food processor and put it back in, or just take a masher and sort of like mash up softly the lentils, because it ends up really being really creamy. All right, so back to the chocolate. You got it all nice and warm?
Yeah.
So you add it back into the warm milk with a whisk, okay? All right. So I have that over like a low medium heat. You want to let it start to bubble, and then once it starts to bubble, I lower it just a little bit, because then it'll start to thicken. And make sure that you just whisk it all the time, otherwise it'll end up with like a weird skin at the top. And that's it.
We're done with the bowl, right?
Done with the bowl. Put that in the sink and let your partner clean it. Those are the rules.
Yeah.
Those are the rules of the kitchen. The person who cooks doesn't clean. I think that's probably why I got really into cooking. No, it's because I hate doing dishes. And I'm like, I'll cook. That way I don't have to do dishes. I mean, it's also because I love eating, but mostly the dishes. But now I live by myself, so I have to do both.
Awesome. And we didn't do anything with the butter yet, right?
Not yet. So once this starts to bubble up, the pudding thing, you take it off the heat, and then you add the actual chocolate, 3 ounces of that, which is about, I think it's just under a 1/4 cup.
Mine is a hard thing, so it says 2.8 ounces, so it's close enough. But how would you suggest do I just like break it up?
Yeah, so just with your knife, just sort of like create shavings essentially of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I like the chocolate chips because it's sort of cut up for me already, and I'm lazy. And then you add the butter, because it adds a little bit of luxuriousness to it, and then the vanilla at the end. But yeah, I don't know if you guys wanted to continue until we finish this, but I'm just being mindful of the time.
Oh yeah, so it's 7 o'clock, or 7:04 actually. Sorry, repeat. I mean, so we promised till 7, so we're a little over already, but let's just repeat. How do you wrap this up?
How do I wrap what up?
How do you repeat what you shared? You
okay, so we got the pudding over the heat. I'm waiting for this to start to thicken up. I'm whisking it, making sure that there aren't any clumps with it. Then once it starts to thicken up, I get it off the heat. And it should be able to, like, you'll see it with, if you have a rubber spatula, you could either do it with a whisk or the rubber spatula. But with a rubber spatula, you'll start to see it coat the back of the rubber spatula. That's how you know it's good. And then you remove it from the heat. I'll do it with the rubber spatula.
We can stay on. We recognize.
Okay, yeah, if you want to stay on, stay on. I'm not going to kick anybody off.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're cooking.
We're cooking. I'm pretty proud of myself.
You're making things. You're making dinner and dessert.
This is perfect. I would say having those the chips and the way you have them is probably much easier than to. It's coming along good though.
Yeah, but now you're learning a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine has started to thicken, so I'm going to remove it from the heat and just like whisk out any lumps that it might have. add, what was it? Half a tablespoon of butter. Doop. 3 ounces of the chocolate. That's probably more, but whatever. And a teaspoon of vanilla.
Feels very decadent.
Yes, it is. And then at the end, I also like to add a bit of salt because it brings out the chocolate flavor. Boy.
And do you have to let it cool?
Yes.
Yeah. Like you put it in the fridge?
In the fridge, I just put this into a bowl and cover it with plastic film. Make sure that the film touches the top of it, otherwise it forms a skin.
Ah. Oh, that's an important trick.
Yes. Unless you like the skin.
Like in Spanish, say like nata, right? Like that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is looking good. Look at how it coats the. Here, I'll bring it over here so you guys can see. See, it's nice and thickened like that. It smells really good.
Yeah. I'm still chopping this. I put in some of the chocolate, but.
So I'm gonna just pour it into a clear bowl.
Yeah, it's a little extra work to cut up the bar chocolate, for sure. So this is the sugar-free option. This is like, the low sugar option. I don't know if that is sugar-free, but. Okay.
Oh, that's good. Yum. Oh, it's so rich. And the thing with chocolate pudding is that you could also add different liqueurs to it if that's the thing that you wanted to do. So something like a dark rum would be really good with this, or an amaretto. That'd be really good with the pudding if you wanted to make it like that. Or you could also make it like a Mexican hot chocolate. So you could add a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of cayenne pepper. But you could just play around with it and then serve it with whipped cream, or you could serve it with like a salted caramel, whatever you want it with, or just eat it straight out of the bowl in the middle of the night.
So I realized I didn't do anything with butter. Was I supposed to add butter?
Yeah, at the end.
At the end. Okay, so I'm still good.
So once you remove it from the heat, once it starts to thicken,
okay,
then you add the chocolate morsels, the butter, and the teaspoon of vanilla.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the vanilla.
I kind of just want to eat this bowl of pudding right now. But I'm not gonna.
Teaspoon? And how much butter?
Half a tablespoon.
Half a tablespoon. Okay, yeah, it's off the heat already, and it's pretty thick. Yeah, I was gonna say it reminds me of like a Mexican hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you know what you could do with this pudding too? If you want to eat it warm like this, if you happen to have like churros, dip it into this chocolate pudding mix. Good. Can you imagine that right now? Just dipping it into that instead of waiting until it cools off. And then chocolate pudding. So this is half the amount because I'm by myself, so I made half the amount, but it's easily adaptable to make more of it if you have more people at home. And I put it in the fridge. I'll probably eat it in 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, really? That long?
I probably yeah, because you want it to cool down all the way.
Yeah. I don't know. This like looks good hot. Or maybe I'm just really hungry.
No, it is good.
Okay. And where should our lentil soup be at this point?
So it should be just about ready. Boop, boop, boop. I'm gonna check it on it right now. Alrighty. So, yum. So at this point, the lentils have been cooking. Most of them are sort of breaking up, bursting, and that starchiness will release into the broth. I also like to take like a potato masher like this and mash up some of the larger pieces of carrot. So the sweetness from the carrot it like becomes part of the broth too.
I really want to just try this chocolate. I'm sorry. I'm gonna
Do it!
Okay. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yay, I made something.
Yay! You made something.
It's really good.
All right, now we're gonna try the soup.
My hands again.
Over again. Yum. At this point, if you taste it, it might need a little bit more salt. Feel free to add a little bit more salt. I'm good with it the way that it is. Not that you could tell. I turn it off and then just serve it, and that's it. That's the whole thing. That's all you do.
Why don't you serve it and present it? I think that's just the final touch.
Oh, you want me to do that? Okay, I can do.
I'm looking for something to smush it. I don't think I have that potato masher situation. What's a good alternative if you don't have a potato masher?
Do you have a blender?
I do.
I mean, you don't have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could put it into a food processor or a blender, and just blend up about half of it, because it just sort of thickens it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I assume you take out the bay leaf, right?
The what?
The bay leaf?
Yeah.
You don't eat that. Okay.
Don't eat the bay leaf. Although it's supposed to be lucky if you're served the bay leaf.
Oh.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna blend it, you don't want it in there.
That's right. So there it is. There's my bowl.
All right. I think I'm almost done too. I don't want to blend it on camera because it's gonna make a lot of noise.
Yeah, it's gonna be noisy. But just taste it for flavor if it's how you like it.
Yeah. Great. So how does it taste?
I don't know, you tell me.
Let's see. Okay. I do want to share one other PSA. Notify NYC sent me another text. They said New York State on pause is extended to 4/15, so April 15th. Non-essential workforce is directed to continue to work from home at least until 4/15. That's big news, actually. So New York City and New York State has asked everyone who's a non-essential worker to continue to work remotely until April 15th.
Yeah. We're gonna be here easily. We're gonna be for 3 months. That's what we're seeing out of China. It's what we're seeing out of Italy. We're going to be in this situation for at least 3 months.
All right. Taste it. Mmm. Yay! Yum.
All right. Does it need any salt or anything?
What?
Does it need any salt or anything?
No, I think like individually as we serve it, people might want a little extra something, but I think it's a good universal. It's so good. It's a very universal meal.
Yeah.
I think too, I mean, mine's so thick, like I think you can actually make rice and top it on the rice. Because it's thick. I like it thick too, as opposed to too soupy, but it feels less like a soup and more like a kind of a stew or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
Yeah, that's why I like this, is because it does feel really hearty, really stewy, without having any meat in it, and being super affordable and really nutritious. Lentils are really high in protein,
yes,
fiber.
Yeah. So great. So we made a healthy lentil soup and a very decadent hot chocolate. And again, mine was at least low sugar because of the ingredients I chose, which was Lily's stevia sweetened vegan hot chocolate, dark chocolate. I went with dark chocolate along with the other substitutes I made. So a pretty healthy meal. You get the feel of the dessert and a very delicious lentil soup. So thank you so much, Cristina. I really appreciate it. I will be doing this again. And for everyone watching, just a reminder that we'll be hosting another webinar on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And we're going to have 2 really amazing housing lawyers on. Wednesday's April 1st, a day in which many of us are concerned about paying our rent or our mortgage, and they will update us as to where we are in the state and the city regarding mortgage payments and rent payments, and what your rights are as a tenant, and what you can do in this moment. So please join us at 8 o'clock on Wednesday for that. And if you are a volunteer or would like to learn how to volunteer, we're going to have a virtual volunteer happy hour. You could bring both a cocktail and a mocktail. So, and that'll be, Mia, what time is that? Is that also at 8? You might be on mute.
Sorry. It is at 6 p.m. on Tuesday.
6 p.m. So on Tuesday, this Tuesday at 6 p.m., the 31st, we're going to have a virtual volunteer happy hour celebration. And we'll also give you a mini training too, because we do want to get on the phones. We do want to still reach voters. Right now, our focus is on checking in on them, making sure they're well, that they have the resources that they need. But we need, there's thousands of people in this district, so we want to make sure we're reaching all of them. So Tuesday, our celebration at 6, and then Wednesday, our webinar on housing and housing rights at 8 o'clock. So thank you all so much. Everything's on the website, Vote JGR. There's like a link that says coronavirus, help your neighbors, and that's where all the resources are. So we'll wrap up here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Cristina, again. And please have a safe and healthy evening. Stay indoors, practice social distancing, wash your hands a lot. That's it. All right, bye everyone. Enjoy your dinner.
Bye.
Bye.